Hi, class. This short lecture is going to be over the first two chapters, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. I'm going to use this both for my in-class class that meets every other weekend as well as the online class. So for those of you that are in my online class and have never had me before, part of what I cover in the very beginning, the first couple slides, um, are all new to you, but for those that have had me in class on Marketing 312, there's some points I like to make. So I'll go forward on that basis. So the first two chapters talk about technology. That's chapter 1 in marketing. And then chapter 2 is on segmentation and positioning. That's where I'm going to really spend the majority of this time on this short lecture. So my objective is really to have a review of market segmentation, since all of you should have had it, should have had 312 by now, so should be familiar with market segmentation, targeting, positioning, and then how to select your target markets. So segments are groups of people that have similar needs, and what a company does is it looks at these various groups and then determines which of those is the best fit for its company. Uh, Rarely to never is there a product or a company that targets everybody. That is old school 5 decades ago mass marketing. Even something that's mass marketed like toothpaste and razors are constructed differently to appeal to different segments. If you think about toothbrushes, there's hard, medium, and soft, for example. Uh, Razors are segmented in for men and for women. So everything anymore is any product identifies segments and then targets their products and the accompanying messages to those segments. Now, one of the things that I had when I got my MBA that I review in 312 is that marketing is about answering three questions over time. One is my product or service. Two is who is my customer. And three is what is my value proposition. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this except to say that how you answer that first question, which is the most important one to answer, defines your customer and then the accompanying competitors that go um, with that second answer, and then your value proposition, which in effect is what you want to differentiate yourself from your competition. So that said, I'd say that an iPhone is as an example just the name of the product. It's not what it really is. It's really a miniature communication and entertainment tool. Uh, One of the applications or function of which is its ability to act as a phone, but it has a lot of other accompanying functions or after our abilities. Uh, what's the difference between TJ Maxx and Nordstrom's? Well, you could say they're both stores, but they're again very different. So Nordstrom's is far more than that. It's a it's the core, like TJ Maxx is it's a clothing store that provides, but it provides uh, exceptional service and excellent warranties across an array of high-end brand offerings. So how you define that product or service is very important in answering, as I said, these other questions. So if you call yourself a builder of homes, then that's what you are. That's how your customers are going to see you, and that's how they'll compare you to other choices. So you want to make sure you define yourself in a bigger way than that. Who your customer is just kind of what it says it is, but it's more than that. It's not just who your customers are, what the target markets or segments are that you're servicing, the needs of for whom you're meeting. It's also how those customers interact with your product. So it involves an understanding of who your customers are and their relationship with your product. And that's what consumer behavior is all about. And it also provides the basis for uh, promotions 464 as far as what messages you're going to use to resonate with your customer, and then the media or venues that you're going to use to uh, connect with them on those messages. And then finally, what is my value proposition? Your value proposition, the best ones are usually 3 or 4 words: built for tough, like a rock, you deserve a break today, everyday low prices. They're almost always 3 to 4 words and never more than 8. And that value proposition is a little different than a tagline. It's what differentiates your product in the mind's eye of your customer from the competition. The Kotler Armstrong text talks about it as far as value proposition is the benefits and promises that a business makes to its customers. Either one of them is okay, but in the end of the day, it's what differentiates you in the mind's eye of your customers from the competitors. So the second one, who is my customer, I said is really the core for consumer behavior promotions, and also the very important concept in marketing of target market. So I already said that uh, for a product to be our for a customer to be a target market, your product or service has to fulfill a very real need and should be uh, a complement to that segment as you've defined it. Uh, Everybody might have like a Rolex watch. I don't know. I don't like them, but if you aspire to do that, obviously it's not because it's a watch per se. It meets far more uh, psychological needs around um, recognition and accomplishment than the simple core function of a watch. And so, in that context, Rolex isn't interested in everybody that would like to own a Rolex. They're more interested in, one, the people that want a Rolex, and then along with that, two, those that want it and can afford it. If you cannot afford it, they're not particularly really interested in you. Maybe one day when you can. But as far as selecting what magazines and messages they're going to run to attract um, their true target customers, most of us won't see those ads because we're not going to be interacting with those media. So to be an effective target for a particular business, it has to meet certain criteria. Not on here, it should be measurable, it should be actionable, you should be able to identify it, it should be sizable or substantial. Stable and growing is nice. Stable would mean um, that if you're a bar in a college town, uh, you'll do better targeting non-students for the most part, and that's true the further away from campus you get, uh, than the local market, because the students are not a stable market in as much as there's turnover every year. They have to be reachable. If you're a cigarette and alcohol company, you can't market to kids. I mean, you can try, and they do, but you have to be able to reach them in both through certain media and in more of a literal sense, to be able to provide it to them through, let's say, supply chains. excuse me. And it must be congruent with the market's objectives and resources. That's what I said earlier. It needs to be a fit kind of with the company, its image, its resources, that sort of thing. So if you want to look through these in detail, you can stop the slide and read them, but this is actually from your text. And this is just an application of the concept of segmentation. There's different ways to there are different ways to segment. There are four primary ones. This is demographic, probably the most common. There's geographic, there's behavioral, and there's psychological or lifestyle. Uh, here's some. Geographic is often combined with demographic to get geodemographic. So you might look at, let's say, a certain part of the country and a certain age group within that part of the country, like retirees in Phoenix or retirees in Florida or other parts of the Sun Belt. The book gives you lots of examples of different kinds of segmentation strategies. And this asks the question, which segmentation basis could be used to describe the target audience? What is the message that they're trying to send here? And I'd say that this is trying to really target a higher income demographic who like to travel and try new cuisine. So there's sort of a geographic and psychographic dimension to this ad and the target market to whom it's trying to appeal. Kind of a fun thing to look up in terms of psychographic. This psychographic is VALS. You can go, and it stands for values and lifestyles. And you can Google it and go and take the survey if you never have. I encourage you to do that. It's kind of neat. It takes about maybe 15 minutes to answer all the questions. They're a combination of boilerplate ones that place you into one of these eight categories, and then they ask you some demographic questions as well around income and age and that sort of thing. But it's fairly accurate in its being able to estimate based on the information that you provide about yourself as well as the questions that you answer. It's fairly good at estimating what kind of products based on your age and income that appeal to you, the brands that appeal to you. Most of you will probably fall in based on your age and the fact that you're going to school into experiencers, achievers, or innovators. It normally puts you into two, with one most significant. But innovators, achievers, and experiencers will probably be the most common in one combination or another. So how is that used? Well, if you're experiencers, let's say, I used to fall into that when I was younger, and somebody like Nike might use that to estimate the total market within the country or within a region of the country, because it also asks zip code. They might use it to estimate the market for a particular product, let's say a running shoe targeted to women between the ages of 25 and 35, high income, urban dweller, and they can use that to like I just said, to estimate the total market size or determine perhaps where they want to beta test, something like that. And innovators often applies to people who, and it's kind of an age thing off. Well, let me stick with experiencers. So that's young people. It's people that jump out of airplanes and stuff too. That's sort of the experiencer thing. But it could also apply to somebody my age, who I'm considerably older than that, but let's say somebody in their 60s um, that still likes to have, quote, experiences, unquote, but don't want to jump out of planes anymore. I don't run as much. But, but Caribbean Cruise, let's say, is very interested in connecting with me as an experiencer in my age group because of my income. They want to know if I'm single or married, uh, like they want to know if a college student is a college student. And they have different cruises, long story short, for each of those age groups and the events that they plan and the locations that they plan uh, for those particular cruises are all built around the target market to whom that particular cruise is intended to appeal. So they that's a really good example of how you could use vowels from a marketing perspective. Positioning is trying to figure out where your product, how your product is seen by your target market. It kind of relates to the value proposition. Um, and so I said a value proposition is that which distinguishes your product in the mind's eye of the customers as being different or similar to the competition. That's what distinguishes your product in the mind's eye of the customer relative to the competition. And you want to understand clearly two things: how you see your product, how you intend it to be or be seen, and how your customer sees it. And you want those two things to be as close to one another as possible, because you don't do yourself any good if you see yourself as being um, chic and nouveau, and you're seen by your competitor as being a Ranagan and old and traditional and so on and so forth. So you want your product to be similar to how your customer sees you. So what we do is we construct these positioning or perceptual maps uh, so we can locate them, our view of our product relative to our customer's view. How do we do that? Well, we would sit down with a group of people in our company and we have a conversation around where it's located on these different axes. In this case, it looks like a battery, and how we view it, and we place it on this axis, and then we do surveys with our customers and then see where they've located our product relative to competitors, and then we do what we need to do to adjust elements or aspects of our product to be more in keeping with how the customer sees it. And so we define the market. How do we do this? We go through a process of defining the market, buyers and our competitors. We look for key attributes that are important around our product or service. Um, do a lot of research around consumers' perceptions on competing offerings as well. Um, and and then ultimately we construct a map that visually displays these relationships. And same thing as I said before on one of the other slides, you can stop and this slide and read through this. This is in your book, but positioning maps have lots of applications. I actually like them a lot because I'm a visualizer, not a verbalizer. I don't like to read complex explanations of things. Um, I'm much better when you show me. And so here's something from your text, I think, how Qantas does different things in its seeding to appeal to different market segments, again, and relative to the competition. Repositioning is harder. That's to try to move. The easiest thing to do when you're in positioning, when you do these positioning maps, is to, like I said, figure out how you see your product, your organization, figure out, determine how the customer sees your product, and then try to move your product more to how the customer sees it. It's much more difficult to reposition uh, the customer and to move them toward you because customers psychologically are kind of stuck in how they see you. So it's easier to move in repositioning you toward your customer's perspective. Um, so next, coming up for the next week, week 3 for the online people, and next time we gather for the in class, we're going to be talking about chapters 3 and 4. Um, so I'll stop here for both of you. We've already discussed discussion thread number 1, but here is something that I posted as an attachment to one of the assignments um, around how how our customers, and this relates to chapter 1, view, not our customers, but how people on the internet view the whole issue of security and safety of their information, uh, and whether or not they have a full understanding. That's the long and short of it, or whether or not um, people understand how their information is viewed, how much, just how much information they actually give up to companies. Week 2 and 3, we're in the middle of week 2 for the online. Week 3 is coming up. So anyway, that's the end of that.